Hi everyone, this is Sophia from the Unfair Advantage, and we have a really special guest today, Ruzenell. Is that how you pronounce her name?
Yeah.
And she's from the UCLA, and she's going to be majoring in biology. So, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Sophia. My name is Ruzenell. I'm a first year at UCLA. My major is pre-human biology and society, and I'm from San Diego.
So, the major goal of this call is for you to break down your high school journey. Like, what kind of student were you? How did you do academically? And what did you do for extracurriculars?
Okay. So my first year at high school, I was already taking like honors and AP classes because I knew that like my goal was to go to a good college. And then I think the most APs I ever took was in my junior year. I took five. My schedule only allowed me to take six classes. So I was really stacking it by my junior year. But some of my extracurriculars were I was heavily involved in orchestra. I played violin. On my own time, I played piano, and I like got certified for. I don't know if it's like a nationwide thing, but it's called Music Teachers Association of California, where um, I don't know, you just like test and like compete as a pianist. And then I was also heavily involved in my church's youth ministry, and I was in academic league, which if anyone saw Rakesh's interview, we met through like orchestra and academic league, so we were pretty close through those. And I was in my clubs for all 4 years of high school because I don't know, I was just lucky, I guess, that I found my home my very first year, and I found a lot of friends, and it was just a good time. But for academics, I don't really know how to explain my journey. It was pretty standard as far as it goes for like people in my high school because we only had like certain APs available to certain grades, and it was I don't know the regular path. But I took my SATs the summer I think it was the summer before my senior year. I only took it once because I was studying the whole summer and I got like high 1500s. And after that, I took two SAT subject tests. I took the AP Chem because one of the programs, I mean, not AP Chem, I took the Chem SAT subject test because one of the programs I was applying to required that score. And I also took the Math 2 subject test because that's pretty easy if you know math. And I did pretty well on those as well. I don't remember the exact score, but I remember like reporting it to my school, so I wasn't embarrassed about it. And then what else? That's all I got, unless there are any specific questions.
Yeah. So going back to the extracurriculars, I don't know if you mentioned it, but what extracurriculars did you do?
So I was in orchestra. I was in academic league, which is like quiz bowl kind of.
Mhm.
And then I also was in student council. I held like leadership positions in that. And then I did youth ministry through my own church.
Mhm.
And I played piano like on my own time.
Okay. And why did you know that you wanted to be a biology major?
I've wanted to be a doctor ever since,
Mhm.
heavily influenced by my parents because that's what they do. And biology seemed like the natural route for that. And also,
Mhm.
I don't know, it's just the most interesting. I actually got into Berkeley for chemical biology, and I was thinking about like, I was considering Berkeley, but then I realized how much I don't like chemistry. So I just stuck with bio.
So did you apply to UCLA as a bio major?
Yes.
Okay. And we had another question that said, why did you end up choosing UCLA?
Good question. I UCLA was not my dream school, like to be completely transparent. I had my eyes set on a different private college that I did get into after getting off of the wait list. But, in the middle of COVID and all of that, I was just I didn't like the uncertainty of like in that mid time when I was like on the wait list and I didn't know yet. I didn't like the uncertainty. And so I got into all of the UCs that I had applied to. So that was UCI, UCSD, UCLA, Berkeley, and I think that's it. But yeah, so I knew I didn't want to go to school where I live or where I'm from. So San Diego was kind of like not an option for me because I didn't want to stay here. And UCI, I was seriously considering UCI because I had gotten in early. I was a Regent scholar and I had like so many advantages to that. But I don't know, like I went to the campus for the honors like introduction seminar thing and it just didn't feel like home. And I say that knowing that I've never actually been to the UCLA campus, which is a little sad, but I also know that at the end of it, I was deciding between Berkeley and UCLA. And I mentioned before, like, it really just came down to my major, where I knew that I wanted to study human biology. And UCLA is a great school, so I wasn't too sad about choosing UCLA.
Yeah. So, based off of your college list, I noticed that you had a lot of different colleges that you were interested in, and you went into some and you didn't feel like it was home. And I interviewed a lot of students, and they also felt the same way. Like they got into their dream school, but then when they toured it, it wasn't like home to them. But going on to your college list, how did you decide what colleges you wanted to go to? Like, what factors did you include into that?
For me, I knew that I didn't want to stay near where I'm from because I think that college is a great opportunity to just, explore and be free. And then I did apply to privates because of their like esteem and all of that stuff. But mostly I'm from California and the UCs are basically just like there for you. It's like a go-to option to apply to. So I just stacked all the UCs, and I did apply to like the state school that was near me, SDSU, for like my safety. And I mean, it was very relieving knowing that I had like that to back me up if ever.
Do you know an estimate of how many colleges you applied to or your college list was?
I think I applied to 7 or 8. Yeah, I didn't apply to that many privates because after like the UC application, I was just very essayed out.
Mhm.
And I also just didn't want to have to pay all of the like application fees.
Mhm. And what do you think was the strongest part of your application?
Oh, I really don't know if I'm being honest because I think the college admission process is so vague and unclear for so many different reasons. And they always say that they look at your application holistically, which I guess is true, but I did have the benefit of like having straight A's. I had high AP scores, I had high test scores, and I mean, I was involved in a lot of stuff, which actually might have hurt me because in one of my interviews, I gave the resume to the interviewer and he was like, "How did you do all of this? I'm getting a headache." I was like, "I don't know," which that's a whole other story. But for my resume, probably, I guess my scores, because I really don't know how they would. My essays were also kind of weird. Like I wrote about knitting, so I don't know if that was necessarily like a big push, but yeah, I guess my grades and scores.
And going on to the essays, you wrote one about knitting, so it goes to show that you don't have to be really serious about your essays. You have fun with it. So could you talk more about your UC essays tips
Oh
and
yeah.
anything about that?
I So what I did like as a first step when I looked at all the prompts, I just copied them all into like a Word doc. And then for each one I wrote like brief ideas that I could like write about for each topic. And then from there I chose, I think it was 4 essays that I had to write. I don't really remember, but I chose like the best ones that I thought I could really like flesh out a full complete idea. And like I said, I one of my essays was about like knitting and all the crafts that I did, and then another one was about oh, what was that one? I think another one was about my youth ministry. But really, it's just for the essays, nothing is too small. Like, nothing is, you can write an essay about anything you want, really, as long as it genuinely shows who you are as a person, as a student. And I think for like the privates, at least, I know some of their essays ask for like, why us? Like, why do you want to go to this specific college? And for those, you really do have to research that university and be as specific as you can as to why, of all the universities that you could apply to, why you think that place would be home. But for the UCs, I think they weren't, yeah, the essays aren't too bad because you have a lot of options for the essays. So just pick whichever one feels right for you. And like, you don't have to write this whole essay. Or if you didn't do like, I don't know, some grand research project or like a giant service project, don't feel bad. Like anything that you did as a student should be reflected in your essay because it is your specific journey and you just need to be true and genuine in your like delivery of your essay as an individual.
And going back to your extracurriculars, did you do any extracurriculars related to your bio major?
I ended up being a teacher's assistant my senior year because I didn't really have any more classes to take. So one of my periods was just like helping out my honors physio teacher. And then I tried to apply to be like a hospital volunteer, but I'm also like on the younger side of people in my grade. So I wasn't old enough to, which is kind of a bummer. But not necessarily. I never really worked or like volunteered in a hospital or anything like that. I did my senior year. I ended up volunteering in my like local library, which I wrote about showing. Oh, and then I also worked as a senior. Like I had a job, so I wrote about how my like customer service or like dealing with other people would help me later on as a care provider.
That's awesome. And I know you had like a lot of extracurriculars based off of your interview story. And how did you really manage your time having all those extracurriculars, especially with school?
I think honestly, I don't really know how I did it. But time management, I guess, is kind of obvious. I heavily depended on like Google Calendar and blocking out like the times because I'm also a visual person, so it helped to see like when I'm busy and when I'm not. But I think it was also a lot harder to do these things when like I couldn't drive for obvious reasons because like you need to get to where you need to go. But yeah, so it helped when I was able to drive myself and get to places without bothering my parents. And I don't, it wasn't as stressful as it sounds, I think, but there were definitely times when I was pulling all-nighters like every 4 weeks.
And we have a question from Bao, and he says, "What is your favorite part of UCLA?"
Oh, um, my view of UCLA is probably very limited compared to other people who like go to UCLA because I've only experienced it like through Zoom and that's about it. But I'm actually in a sorority called Chi Delta Theta, and they are just the most genuine women I've ever met. And I think that they've made my transition into UCLA so fun, and they make me feel like not necessarily an outsider because I think it's very easy for first years, especially now, um, with everything online, to feel very isolated because you don't really get to make a ton of friends and no one really turns their cameras on during lecture. So you're just like sitting in your room listening to the prof speak. But I think my favorite part of UCLA is definitely the clubs and orgs that I've been able to meet people through.
And what specific clubs were you in at UCLA or that you joined?
Right now, I'm in the Asian sorority that I was talking about earlier, and I'm in HOSA, which is like future health professionals. It's kind of like academic league, but also medical. I'm not really sure how to explain it, but there's that. And then I'm also loosely involved with a club called Filipinos for Community Health. Um, what else am I in? Oh, also, I'm in a club called Bruin Initiative where we basically, I guess, tutor high school students. Right now, we're prepping for our AP like crash course before the test, and before like AP season, we were helping students with college apps.
And speaking of APs, do you have any tips for students that are doing APs right now, like how to study them, how to manage them?
Um, I think the first few AP tests that I took, I thought like I have to buy the Barron review books, and I have all of them like in my closet just sitting there because I never honestly I never really use them to review. I just use them for the practice tests. And I think after the first few AP tests that I took, I realized that the best way to prepare for an AP test is just to take a lot of practice tests. Um, and balancing a lot of like, if you have to take a lot in, like, the same year, that's definitely very stressful. I remember my junior year when I had to take, like, 5, that was the worst time ever, but I think just prioritizing which ones are the hardest or which ones are you're not as confident with, I guess, at the start when you're studying, and then just working your way it also might help to work, like, whichever test is earliest just to study for that and then, like, block it out, but I'd say just focus mostly on whichever one is giving you the most anxiety because that's what I did.
And if you don't mind, how many AP tests did you take or classes did you take?
Oh, okay. My first year, I took Human Geo. My second year, I took Euro. My third year, I took Calc BC, Chem, Lang. Oh, my second year, I also took Physics. And then my senior year, I took Bio, Lit, and Gov. I took 9, if I'm counting correctly.
And a little bit of a fun question. What type of APs do you think is the easiest out of the ones you took, and which one did you think was the hardest?
Oh, the easiest were probably AP Human Geography, AP Govern or AP US Gov, and the hardest AP Chem was hard for me. I already said I don't like Chem, but also our teachers, like, it was hard to understand, that's all I gotta say. But also, AP Euro was kind of hard, but that may just I mean, it's hard all around, but also, like, for me, I don't really like history, so that was another thing.
And if you could go back to your high school years, what advice would you give to yourself for your for you personally in your high school career?
I think I would tell myself just to appreciate it more. I know that, like, everyone says that, but it really is true because once you get to college and, like, your friends don't go to the same university as you, it is very different, and I think I was very headstrong about I will do whatever it takes to get to this specific college and not necessarily just like I just want like, it was I was very, very motivated to get to my dream school, which, didn't happen, but that was fine because I'm happy at UCLA. It's a great school. And I just wish that I had appreciated like not the freedom, but like how easy high school was compared to like college now. Yeah.
And speaking of like the easiness between high school and college, how is college like right now, and what's the difference between it and high school? Was it harder, a lot harder? How hard was it?
I think it's just I was very nervous when I like my first quarter at UCLA because the when you get the syllabi, you can see how much like the final exams are like how big of a part they play in your total grade in the class, which is pretty daunting. So the one thing that that I do now that I never did before was like making my own grade calculators. So throughout the progress of the course, I can like put my numbers in and see what grades I need for a specific grade or anything like that. But for college classes, yeah, they are very different, especially in your first years because of how many people there are in the class. One of my lectures has like 400 people, and the most kids that I had in a class in high school was like 30. So it is very different. And I would say that your learning is very much like an individual endeavor where you can attend professor's office hours or like TA office hours. And I don't go to many, which is not the best thing, but I'm doing fine. But it is it is very much like you need to be on top of attending lecture every day. You need to be on top of submitting your assignments on time and doing tests on time because no one's going to remind you. And maybe this is just me, but I also don't know very many like other people in my classes. So that's just another added level of me needing to be on top of everything myself because no one's going to tell you. But in high school, I think you get very it's high school you can complain a lot because of all the homework that you have to do, which is like daily because you see the class or you see the teachers every day. But in college, you I have like one class that only meets one time a week. So the homework isn't too bad, but you really have to make sure that you understand the information on your own.
And how did you navigate the transition between senior year of high school to freshman year of college?
My senior year, I am guilty of like suffering from senioritis. I think it was only 4 classes, so I was very lax and then COVID hit, so I was just and then like my teachers didn't really know how to transition into online. So it was basically I had a really long summer. And I was kind of scared about going to UCLA because, it is the quarter system and things move really fast. But I think it really helped me to get a planner. I mentioned before that I depended heavily on Google Calendar, which I still do, especially with all the clubs that I'm in. But I think writing down everything that I have to do for each class really helped. And I also changed my study habits a little bit, where in high school, I never really this is gonna sound really bad, but I never really, like, studied. I just understood the material based on, like, the homework that I was given and all of that. But now I make, like, study guides based on PowerPoints and homework problems, and I think that really helped me the most because it just organized everything based on, like, each course.
And how did you get to know the people socially through virtual college, meeting new people at the UCLA?
For me, it's mostly just been through the clubs that I'm in because, like, to be honest, I don't really talk to anyone in my classes. A few of my classes do have, like, small groups where you work on, like, worksheets every week with each other during discussion, but other than that, most of the people that I've met have been through clubs and extracurriculars, and it's also kind of funny because most of the people that I know are not first years because, um, you just end up I don't know. I don't really know why that is, but most of the people that I know at UCLA now are, like, 3rd and 4th years. I do hope to make more friends in my own grade when I get to UCLA eventually, but I think having upperclassmen friends is really helpful in terms of, like, they tell you which profs to look out for, or they give you tips about, like, "This class is really hard," or, stuff like that.
And on the for the UCLA classes, I heard you had like 400 people in that class. and at your high school, you had way less than that. So, did you like the bigger classes or did you like the smaller classes more?
Um, I think with the bigger classes, it's easier to focus on the material as opposed to or not worrying necessarily, but as opposed to being conscious about like everyone around you. Because in high school, like I was generally in classes with my friends because we all took like the same APs. But now you I mean, for me at least, I never really turn my camera on in big lecture, but in the smaller discussions where it's closer to the size of a high school class, where it's 30 or like 20, 30 people in one discussion section, I do turn my camera on and it's easier to, I guess, apply the knowledge that you learn in lecture. But I think I do miss the high school setting where, like, you're learning more collaboratively, which is easier to do in a small classroom as opposed to the like 400 people.
And we have one more question. Bao said, "Did anything surprise you about UCLA when you became a student?"
Um, my fall quarter, I was a fellow with the USAC EVP, which is the like UCLA's version of student council, and with their external vice president. And through that, I learned all about like the structure of like student government at UCLA, which was so crazy to me because the EVP especially, they were heavily involved in like lobbying with actual like government representatives, which was so crazy to me because I didn't like that was not anything that I thought people did. But I was surprised about how involved UCLA students were, civically speaking, where in high school, I think it was not necessarily taboo, but no one really talked about it. So now it's like a bigger part of the conversation with it, which I really appreciate.
And we'll have one last question that comes from me. We have a community that helps students gain the leverage in college admissions, financial success, and career aspirations. And my last question is, what is one piece of advice you want to give to high school students that you think would give them an advantage to know at this time?
um, I would maybe just say, the advice that I would give myself when I was like back in high school would just be stop putting so much pressure on yourself to get to like your end point, I guess, because college isn't the end all be all, really. It's whatever job you get afterwards. And I think I was very guilty of the whole mentality where if I don't get into this college, I won't get into this internship, then I won't get into this job. And it was just a real snowball effect of anxiety. But I've met so many people through UCLA where, their plans didn't end up exactly the way they wanted to either, but they're still thriving in their respective careers. And in high school, I would just wish that I wasn't so worried all the time, I guess, because I knew that I was working toward a goal, which I think is good to have set goals for yourself, but not necessarily feel like your world is going to end if you don't get in somewhere, which is how I felt. So it was a transition and it was a journey of self growth. But I think that if I had learned that earlier in my life, I would have been able to enjoy high school a lot more.
Yeah, and that reminded me of a quote that said, rejection equals redirection, meaning even if you do get rejected from a college, like let's say your dream college, you'll always get to another college, and that may be better for you.
Yeah.
And with that, I really love your advice. You can have 30 seconds or more to promote your social media and plug anything.
Oh, okay. My Instagram is just my name, Ruzenell. I If anyone is in the LA area, I suggest looking up Bruin Initiative because we have, a great curriculum. We're really planning on like gearing up for this AP prep season, and I'm just, excited to work on that. But for anyone who's going to apply to colleges, good luck. I believe in you. You got this.
Thank you so much for your time, and I'll see everyone in the next video.